How does it feel to be lied to so badly? They lied about everything. All their alleged principles turned out to be lies. They never cared about freedom of religion or speech or the right to protest. They never cared about people losing their jobs and being silenced for political reasons. They never cared about cancellations. They never cared about an overreaching government pressuring companies to shut down the platforms of dissenters. They never cared about mass surveillance or a militarized government attacking its own citizenry. Oh, they stoked fears about that happening. They warned us for years. But now that it's finally happening, where are they? They're cheering it on. Liars, phonies, frauds, hypocrites, scoundrels. You know who you are. This will all come to an end one day. And when it does, none of you will be forgotten. To support Trumpism at this late hour, after everything that has been said and done, after all the many attacks he has orchestrated against our own country, under the guise of patriotism, is to be a traitor. You are a traitor if you still support his authoritarian regime at this late stage. Ignorance is no longer an excuse. So, are you complicit or are you not? And to the corporations and organizations bending the knee out of fear, need I remind you that Trump will not be in office forever, and the actions you take now while you're under pressure speak to who you truly are. And we will not forget that either. We will not forget what you did, good or bad, while under this temporary pressure. So what you need to do at this point in your life is weigh short-term comfort against long-term survival. In other words, think about the future. Giving in now might make you complicit to something people will find infamously unacceptable in the future. A permanent blemish on your record, akin to a felony. Not as part of some phony, inorganic cancellation, but as genuine disgust in people of conscience. And the things you do now will be cemented in history and will tell everyone who you really are. And whether you like it or not, you will be judged by others. There's no hiding from it. So choose wisely. Make your Faustian bargain if you wish, but accept the consequences of that. You know, when I talk to people and they say, did you know that so-and-so is MAGA? Or I tell them about some influencer, celebrity, or acquaintance that is MAGA. The reaction is always similar to finding out that they have cancer. There's genuine sadness for them. That's a damn shame, we say. It's always hard to find out that someone you know has no principles. And when I say no principles, I mean no principles. Because what's truly remarkable is that Trump is guilty of all the things his supporters claim to oppose. That's also strong evidence that we're dealing with a cult here, because the leader is beyond reproach, even when he himself commits all the unforgivable sins in the most egregious ways. Excuses are made for him. exceptions are made, and you are attacked as having committed the ultimate blasphemy known as Trump derangement syndrome. Why is Trump exempt from their own alleged rules? Because he hurts who they hate. And for some people, hurting their enemies will override any of their professed principles. And I mean that everything about Trump is what many of his most ardent supporters once claimed to hate. He's Hollywood elite, complete with his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's a big blue city billionaire who was a Democrat most of his life and was a part of their social circle. He's wildly insecure, weak, and easily offended. He's not a voice for the common man as they try to sell him. He has no idea what it's like to be a common man. Everything has always been done for him. The life of a giant toddler who doesn't know how to do even the most basic things like drive a car or shop for groceries. He cannot relate to you in any way. And not only was he credibly accused of sexual assault 26 times over 4 decades, but he was good friends with over a dozen high-profile pedos and sex offenders and has jumped through absurd hoops to obstruct, cover up, dismiss, and diminish the Epstein files. He released Ghislaine Maxwell to a minimum security prison where sex offenders aren't even allowed, and he even expressed interest in pardoning her. Other prisoners at that facility were transferred to harsher prisons just for speaking badly about her. Let me ask you, how many pedos and sex offenders are you good friends with? And when he came into power, he immediately abused that power, became wildly censorious, caused massive spending and deficits, warmongered, and dropped record-breaking numbers of bombs while claiming to create peace, and even shamelessly claiming that he deserved a Nobel Peace Prize right before sending in troops to attack Americans in cities he considers to be politically opposed to him. And he even openly admitted that it would be good practice for the military. Practice for what, exactly? He bombs civilian vessels, claiming that they're drug dealers, without showing a shred of evidence, as if that's even a crime worthy of being bombed in the first place. He politicizes federal duties that are meant to be neutral, thereby punishing the American people based upon who the majority voted for in a given area. For example, he's defunding energy infrastructure in blue areas to the tune of billions of dollars, which will drive up energy costs for Americans in those states that contribute the most money to the federal government. He denies disaster relief to blue areas, something he falsely accused Biden of doing to red areas, while proudly, openly doing it himself. He's sending in federal agents and red state National Guard to peaceful areas and deliberately stoking conflict, falsely claiming that they're war zones, all so that he can justify more authority. He wants to make blue areas worse places to live so that he can blame it on Democrat leadership. And remember that the man doing this was also a repeat draft dodger who renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War and appointed a Secretary of War who was nothing more than a National Guardsman. Not to diminish the service people of the National Guard, but for one, a particularly young and inexperienced one, younger than I am, to publicly lecture our experienced wartime generals on the dangers of wokeness is absurd and quite ironic, considering he's perfectly unqualified and proven to be grossly incompetent something they warned us that DEI would bring. But it wasn't DEI who brought us the unqualified and incompetent. It was Trump choosing people out of loyalty, whether they'd bend the knee rather than if they were the best person for the job. They claim to desire a meritocracy, but all they really care about is whether you're on their team. Trump has repeatedly committed blatant acts of election interference, has been rightfully charged with RICO violations during the 2020 election, and belongs in prison for doing so, which is exactly where he would have gone if he didn't become the president. He imposes secret police and mass surveillance. Where are you, right-wingers who were against the Patriot Act? And Trump is eliminating the presumption of innocence. Where are all you right-wingers who criticized the Me Too movement's Believe All Women slogan because you claimed to believe in the presumption of innocence? Innocent until proven guilty. Everyone deserves a day in court. Everyone deserves to face their accuser. Remember that? All that went right out the window. Now you cheer when ICE invades neighborhoods in Chicago and rounds people up in bulk without even bothering to find out who they are or what they've done, let alone ask for their papers. At least the Nazis asked for papers. We don't even do that anymore. Where are you now? You're proudly announcing that you voted for it. That's where you are. Sold your soul. Sold everything you claimed to be. And for what? And it's all done with the pretense of stopping crime, which is bullshit. You know, I lived in Chicago when it was at its most violent, which was during the early 90s. Crime today is far below what it was back then. And back then, deploying the military as some sort of solution wasn't even thinkable. Yet the crime managed to drop anyway, by more than 50%. That period is known as the Great Crime Drop. Look it up. And it didn't take the military to accomplish it. Now, people are more afraid of the government than of the gangs. Masked men are rounding up Americans and disappearing them, oftentimes based on race alone, but they'll attack anyone. They beat people in the streets for nothing. It's a gang. They're wearing masks and going after people for doxing them, as if that's even a thing for law enforcement. Their names should be right on their chests for all to see. We as Americans should not be programmed to blindly obey any anonymous person who demands it of us. Why do they even think they can get away with such blatant and illegal abuses of power? Well, because they were given explicit permission by the highest office in the land. So who the hell is going to prosecute them? Well, nobody. Right now, because Trump installed his loyalists. They don't even know how to do their own jobs. All they know how to do is be yes men, follow orders. That's not helping the country. That's endangering it. That's why these masked thugs invading our cities feel safe, zip-tying children in the street, beating random people, attacking anyone who exercises their right to film it, and now even gunning people down. That's why they're not afraid to commit blatant atrocities against Americans on American soil. Anyone who knowingly signs up for that is already the worst of the worst. We're taking people who belong in prison and we're putting them in uniform. And the result is that they are attacking innocent Americans and even children. And they're laughing about it. This is the side that claims to be for family values, by the way. But as I said, that was all a lie. People who still support this have no principles. They lied to you. They didn't want to drain the swamp. They wanted to be the swamp. They weren't outraged. They were jealous. Where are all you people who were against the pandemic overreach? What happened to you? Why aren't you speaking out against this? Where are all you smaller government people? Where are all you states' rights people? I'll tell you where they are. They're supporting it. Because during the pandemic, the policies were affecting them. And that's the only reason they were against it. They can only comprehend that which affects themselves. They're against empathy and will even explicitly say so. But now, they believe that the government is only going after other people, illegals or leftists, and that's what they want. So they don't feel like this government overreach will affect them, so they support it. That's how myopic, selfish, and dumb these people are. And to the masked thugs, remember that when the Nazis were rounding people up, they didn't think they'd be held accountable either. They were in charge. They had ultimate authority over who got rounded up and who got killed. They too were untouchable lords. But that was a very brief moment in time, and just like them, you're not going to be in charge forever. And even though you may feel safe behind your mask, remember that there are still records of everything. You signed up for it using your own name. So just because it isn't known now, that doesn't mean it won't be known later. And so you may find yourself in a courtroom one day, which is a right you stripped from so many others. And if you don't like where they send you, remember where you sent so many others. Remember how you violated their rights. Remember how you terrified people and put them in limbo, put their entire lives on hold. Remember how you laughed about it. When the day comes in which you beg for mercy, ask yourself if those who show no mercy are more or less likely to receive any. But I know that this is falling on deaf ears. You have no principles. 47% of Republicans said that they would still vote for Trump, even if it was proved that Trump was directly involved with Epstein's trafficking of minors. Of the people who voted for Trump in 2024, that's 36 million of them. The law and order people, the anti-pedo people, the family values people. The people who smeared leftists as pedos and groomers just for supporting the LGBT community. The people who claim to care about closing the border because they say they worry about children being trafficked. But if their guy trafficked children or participated in their abuse, then it's okay because he's their guy. He has done more than enough to link himself to sex trafficking and abusing minors, but that doesn't even matter to these people, so there's really nothing you can say to them. Even if Trump were innocent, they already answered the hypothetical. If Trump is guilty, they'd still support him. They've already made the concession, so you can't use logic on them. They don't care about hypocrisy. You can't shame them. They care nothing about morality. How could they? How much worse does it get than sex trafficking children? Yet they're willing to overlook that. Now, maybe some of them questioned it for the length of the typical modern news cycle, but now they're all right back to their usual shameless cheerleading. You see, for them, morality only exists when they feel they've been wronged, but they don't give a damn when anyone else is wronged. For them, morality is just a chess piece that can be used to either attack or be sacrificed for their own benefit. Such people cannot be allowed to shape our society and our future. But that's exactly what they're trying to do right now. And the consequences of that are going to affect us for a very long time if we don't stop it by stripping them of leadership as soon as possible, and then dramatically reducing the power of the executive branch, beginning with making it criminally accountable for its actions. Politicians need to start fearing the people again. I am sick and tired of it being the other way around.